Appreciate the time.
Yeah.
I asked Coach Allen this too, and I swear I'm not comparing notes, but you guys talked about, really kind of imagining a lot of different ways you'd use Marcelino this year. And I know we've asked you about the impact. Sorry, those are my dogs. I know we'd asked you about the impact of, just generally losing him, but how do you maybe start to reimagine the balance of the way you use that Husky that fits maybe, Bryant's skills? Do you move some other pieces around, I guess, or do you maybe look at Bryant and say, listen, this is the position is we needed Marcelino to play it. We need you to kind of step up in some similar ways.
Well, I think it's a grouping of those options. So I think there's certain things that we're going to ask Fitzy to do that very pleased in the last 3 weeks here that he's been able to accomplish. I think he's playing some really good football right now. So excited about his growth and production at that position specifically. And then I think there's, like we said before, when you have a guy that's a dynamic athlete like Lino, you've got to find a way creatively to get people in the right package for what you need in that situation. And so I think there's some things creatively that we may see in the first week here that we've got to be ready to adjust both from a leverage and personnel standpoint, from a leveraging standpoint, schematic standpoint, and as well as a personnel adjustment as well. So I think we're ready to do those things.
John, then Matt.
Just in terms of preparing for Penn State's offense, obviously an offensive coordinator is coming over from Minnesota. I mean, how much do you watch Minnesota film or do you watch Penn State film just to see what they have? How do you mix and blend those things together when you're preparing?
I've glanced at both once or twice, and then went back to Netflix. But outside of that, you do. You got to watch obviously, I think they've made no bones about, you don't bring somebody in from our league with the offensive production that they had last year at Minnesota without giving him a chance to run his system. And so I'm sure they will give him the freedom and authority to be able to do those things. I think good coordinators and smart people find creative ways to get their playmakers in space. I thought Coach Soraka did a phenomenal job of that at Minnesota and featured the players that they had. It will be interesting to see how he features his players at Penn State because he has a little bit different dynamic in certain position rooms. But there's a lot of similarities as well that I think will tie in well with what they did with Minnesota. So probably a really smart hire from a standpoint of what they were looking for and what they need to do moving forward. And so I think it's a culmination of seeing what their personnel is and what he's done in the past and trying to blend the two. So sometimes I got to get a little creative in my scripting to kind of anticipate some things that may come up.
Matt and Paul.
Hey, Coach. How's it going?
Hey, brother.
Coach Allen's talked about Bryson Bonds being somebody. I'm guessing you probably talked about him too in the past. A guy who's come in and really impressed early on. What's allowed him to do that? And then also with the Marcelino injury and you guys having to shuffle the safeties a little bit, how big is it that he's able to come in and be a guy who can get in the rotation right away and help you out?
Yeah, that one was certainly a godsend. Just from a depth perspective, with Raheem being out and then Lino obviously a couple weeks later, just to have a young guy like Bryson that was he's so locked in and he's so clean with his style of play. His footwork is in the right place. His eyes are in the right place. Very little wasted movement. And so he is getting better and better at just anticipating things within the framework of our defense. Usually you have freshmen that just have bad days and, they take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. He's just been on a steady, consistent climb, and he happens to be a pretty good athlete, probably even better than where I thought he would be coming in from a physical standpoint. So he's been an exciting surprise at every level. And I say the word surprise just because I didn't think he would be to this level at this point early on where we can trust him. But he's done a phenomenal job.
Paul, then Tom.
Hey, Coach, thanks for your time. Penn State brings in their deepest and arguably their best offensive line under Franklin. And Coach Allen talked about it earlier today that he feels like, that the line play is going to be what dictates this. What's your thoughts on that? And also, how hard is it to come up with a scheme against our quarterback and running back?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I mean, I think good coordinators find ways to get their players the ball and in space. And so when you look at the group and core of running backs that they have, I think collectively they rush for maybe over 2,000 yards combined, something like that, or close to it. So I think they've got some dynamic players that can hit home runs. But again, I think a lot of that production from the running back core comes from the offensive line. And I thought they were very good last year. May have been the second best offensive line that we faced within our league. Thought they were similar, probably to Tennessee that we saw in the bowl game, who I thought was very talented. And these guys have experience on top of it. So I'm looking forward to that matchup. Very pleased with some of the things we've done as a defensive line and grown. I know, what with Kevin Peoples coming in and some of the dynamics and things that we're doing fundamentally there, very happy with. Of course, they have a new offensive line coach. In fact, the best man in my wedding, him and Coach Trotwine, I believe, played together for the Rams a few years back. So looking forward to connecting with him maybe even before the game. But I've heard great things about what he did at I believe, Boston College. And so I imagine he'll have his own spin and dynamic on an already experienced offensive line. So it'll be interesting. I mean, with a number of new coaches on their offensive staff and the way they're going to go about things, certainly Coach Sirocco, I'm sure, will get them going in the way that direction he wants. But everybody puts their little spin on things with an experienced offense and O-line and core of running backs. That'll be an interesting dynamic.
Tom and Kevin?
Kane, last year you guys did a pretty good job of controlling Sean Clifford in the passing game. He kind of hurt you with his legs a little bit. But now that it's game week, tell me what you think about Sean Clifford and what kind of quarterback he is and the problems that he creates for you.
Well, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. His ability to run the football was really what cost us. If you think about, they had some, I think it was over an 8-minute drive in the fourth quarter, and a number of those third down conversions were off of his feet. So I thought we did a good job of taking them away from a coverage perspective. And I think we limited a lot of their big plays in the passing game. Did a pretty nice job on first and second down against the run too. Really, if you go back and watch, I thought we played pretty well, but really Clifford beat us with his feet. And so I'm sure, I think he's better and better in terms of the passing game. I think, it'll be interesting to see how they use him in this new system and the play action and the RPOs and mix in a little bit of drop back and all that stuff. But he's a dynamic run threat. And so we got to do a better job than we did a year ago to try to hem him up. It's definitely on the forefront of my mind.
Kevin and Jim?
Yeah, Coach, you guys did a pretty decent job also last year of limiting Freiermuth, and obviously he's, one of the better pass-catching tight ends in the country. What kind of stress does that put on your defense, and how do you go about kind of replicating what you guys did last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the name of the game right there, that to have a player as dynamic as him in a system that they're bringing in it'll be interesting to see how creative they get in finding ways to get him the ball. I mean, I think he's a great football player that is a physical blocker and dynamic in the passing game. And so you don't have players like that on your team without finding ways to get them the ball, or else you're going to answer a lot of questions you don't want to be answering. So that will be our job. We'll have to find a way to stop him no matter how they use him, both in the run and pass game. But a very gifted player. There were some things we did a year ago to take him away. We'll have to find new ways to do that within the confines of their scheme now, but that needs to be a point of emphasis for us. And sometimes we may have to adjust on the fly, just based off how they use them.
Jim and then Griffin?
Hey, Coach, you talked about it earlier in preparation and using film from Minnesota as well as Penn State. And at least you have film to look at. Actually, I'm going to ask you to put yourself in a different position. Coach Sheridan is someone who is completely unknown to their defensive coordinator. He has not been an offensive coordinator before. How would you prepare for someone who you don't have film on?
Oh, well, now, I mean, in this instance, obviously we do know what their defense has ran in the past and all those things. And obviously Nick being with us last year and for the last few years, I think he's got a good feel for it. That's a tough deal now. I've had to do that in the past, preparing for someone that you gather bits of evidence and use social media and message boards and, you find creative ways to figure out what it is a team is going to do. Any Twitter clip that you can find of 5 offensive players doing something, you know what I mean, to just get a vibe of what they're doing. I remember we were getting ready for Georgia Southern when I was at South Alabama. They had a new system, and we just scoured the internet to figure out what they were going to be and what those coaches have been in their past. So it's a tough challenge when you have to do those things. Obviously, Nick being a new coordinator, but knowing what primarily he is going to face is obviously a little bit different dynamic than that. Same deal with us on this side of the ball. At least we, have some concept of what they conceptually have done in the past in Soraka's offense. But again, how he uses his personnel is the name of the game for what we're going to have to adjust to. So to your point, there is a lot of unknowns going into this game from our end.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, we'll wrap up with Griffin.
Hey, Coach, you mentioned Reese Taylor last week challenging for a starting spot. What makes him a special player on the defense, and how have you felt that him playing quarterback in high school is kind of translated now to playing as a defensive back in college?
Yeah, I mean, Reese Taylor's a starter in my mind. I think we have 3 very dynamic corners. They're all 3 of them very athletic and obviously instinctive players that can make a lot of plays. And then we've got a couple of guys that behind them that are doing a good job of coming on as well. But in terms of experience, those 3 guys really stand out in terms of what they've done in the past. And to me, Reese, I think he's played so much football. And I think I've alluded to that in the past. Guys that have played a lot of football, they just seem to have a better understanding of the game naturally. But his instinctive vision in the passing game and being able to drive concepts, understand when you're getting a play action versus a quick glance, recognizing when to trigger in the run fit. Some guys have it. They understand football. Other guys don't. Reese Taylor is, in my mind, well above the norm in terms of instinctive vision, especially as a corner out there.